All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and man, I'm not gonna lie, Dan Quinn is killing it right now. I don't know how he's doing this, but the Washington Commanders have now hired one of the NFL's best special team coordinators, and Larry Izzo, man. We're gonna talk about some stats and how great he is at developing players, especially on the special team side of things. There's a reason a lot of special teams coaches are the ones that's highly coveted to become head coaching candidates eventually, like later on down their career paths. Teams love to poach special teams coordinators from other teams to make them head coach, and this is just one of those guys that has that potential for sure. So we got to talk about how Larry Izzo is one of the best special teams coaches in the entire NFL. We also got to talk about how Dan Quinn is putting together an elite staff, but specifically an elite development staff. I feel like there's no argument against that at this point. I feel like there should be a unanimous vote that Dan Quinn is putting together an elite development staff. When it comes to quarterbacks, DBs, and special teams, you really can't get much better than what we have right now. We'll see about everything else: tight ends, running backs, wide receivers, linebackers, defensive line, and all that type of stuff. We still have a lot more hires to go, which takes me to my last point. We're going to do a review of where we currently are with all of our Washington Commanders coaches. Where are we hired? Where do we still have some openings? And who are some potential additional coaches that we may hire in the future? Don't forget about Al Harris, man. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. Again, every little thing that the Commanders have going on, I'm gonna keep y'all updated on it. Stay tuned. Super excited about all of the content that I'm working on, especially these mock drafts, these film sessions for all of the draft prospects we're looking at, and a whole lot of other ideas I have on this screen, all over the place. It's just something like this just sets everything else I've been working on already for weeks now back even further. So I don't worry about there being a limit to what content I can come up with, because I have so many ideas that I haven't even had the chance to do yet. So stay tuned. And without further ado, man, let's go ahead and get to this video. Let's get it. All right, so the first place that I saw it reported, the first person that I saw reported was Ben Standig. I want to make sure I give him his credit. The Commanders are hiring Larry Izzo as their special teams coordinator. And I know with a lot of these hires that I've talked about in videos, like defensive passing game coordinator, offensive passing game coordinator, special teams coordinator, I know these aren't like the most exciting coaches that you can hire. Of course, like head coach matters the most, offensive coordinator matters right under that, and then defensive coordinator is probably third, especially when you have a defensive minded head coach. You could probably flip offensive coordinator with defensive coordinator if we had an offensive minded head coach. But either way, instead of going on that whole tangent right there, I know that these hires that we've been talking about in recent videos aren't as important as a lot of those other hires. But when I tell you they were getting the best of the best in a lot of ways, or at the very least guys that are specifically elite at like the most random detailed things. Like Cliff Kingsbury, you could talk about his play calling, you could talk about his ability to adjust to defenses adjusting to him coming up with a counter. But one thing you can't deny about him is his ability to score points, get yards, and to develop quarterbacks. Brian Johnson, I know he didn't look too good as the Eagles offensive coordinator, even though I know there was a lot of disappointment in their season, but it was like a Super Bowl or bust situation. He's a first-time offensive coordinator, and they were still 7th in points and I think 8th in yards in the NFL. If that's disappointing, give me more of that. And then also, he's not coming here to play call. He's coming here to literally be the passing game specialist coordinator and to also help develop quarterbacks. He's elite at that. No ifs and buts about it. Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. as a combination create great defenses and develop the secondary arguably better than anyone else in the NFL. Then you also have Jason Simmons, and what he did with the Raiders, his development of DBs there with the Green Bay Packers, Jair Alexander, all of those type of guys. Oh, they give him a lot of the credit for how great they are now. So when it comes to the DB group, when it comes to the quarterback group, and now special teams, you can argue we have some of the best developers of talent, the guys that can maximize talent. And when you're projecting players, especially coming out of the draft, and you're looking at their floor and their ceiling, we have the coaching staff to where it feels like we can get closer to that ceiling. We may never reach that ceiling with some of the guys. We may reach that ceiling with some of the guys, or maybe we even pass that ceiling and we go to the stars with some of them. But at the very least, I have faith that with the coaching staff that we're putting together, we're going to get the most out of every individual player that we bring in here. And Adam Peters finds talent arguably better than anybody else in the entire NFL, especially when we're talking about the late rounds 4 through 7. Nobody does it like him out of the entire NFL. And then Eugene Shin here too. I'm just super excited. So I know these aren't, we're talking about a special teams coach here. But at the same time, man, just this overall structure that we have going on, top to bottom, front office, the coaching staff, and how we're filling it out, it's amazing right now. So that's why I'm so excited. Because if you just hire Larry Izzo as your special teams coordinator, but like our head coach hiring, or our offensive coordinator hiring, defensive coordinator hirings, all of those was just bad or man, then maybe it's kind of like, maybe we have a good special teams coordinator, but all for what? But the fact that it seems like we're starting to really dive into this and put together an elite staff, adding a Larry Izzo to that already would look to be a really good staff only makes it better. It's like just the extra seasoning on top, man. I'm telling y'all. And now all three of our official top coordinators are set. Dan Quinn is the head coach, but now offense-wise, Cliff Kingsbury, good. Joe Witt Jr. on the defense, good. And then now Larry Izzo on the special team side. Shouts out Nate Caxter, because I felt like he did a pretty decent job, but he's not Larry Izzo. This is a clear upgrade. And that's another thing too with these hirings that we're making. I'm very optimistic about Cliff Kingsbury being an upgrade over what anything we've had the past few years here for the Commanders. I feel like Joe Witt Jr. is going to be an upgrade over what we had between Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio. I mean, if you want to just compare Dan Quinn, Joe Witt Jr. to Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera, those are upgrades at the very least defensively. And then special teams wise, Larry Izzo is easily an upgrade over Nate Caxter. So this elite staff that Dan Quinn is putting together, at the very least, is better than what we've had before. And you can argue, again, especially from a developmental side of things, a coaching side, being able to teach players and maximize every player's individual talents and unique skill sets, this is one of the best coaching staffs that is being put together in the NFL, especially out of all of the teams that had head coaching vacancies. Out of the 8 teams that were looking for a head coach, you could argue we're putting together the best overall staff in totality. Dan Quinn may not be the best head coach out of all of the head coaches that got jobs this head coaching cycle, but if we're talking about overall staff, when you compile everything together, you can argue Dan Quinn and what we have going on here is probably the most impressive and probably the one with the highest ceiling, but a great blend of also proven experience all added in. Because, I mean, Brent Vesselmeyer is our DB's coach this past season. Yeah, the DBs fell off, but he was one of those guys that a lot of people looked at like he could be the next bright, young, defensive-minded head coach type of guy. But he didn't come in with much experience. Jason Simmons comes in with that, this might be the next Mike McDonald type of guy. But he also has plenty of experience grooming and developing a lot of DBs. So we have like a great balance of both in this coaching staff. I'm super excited. But let's go back to Larry Izzo. And for the Seahawks, man, with Larry Izzo as their special teams coordinator, they've consistently been really good at special teams while he's been there. Like, this is arguably a home run hire when it comes to special teams. I know special teams coordinator isn't like the sexiest hire that you could do out there, the most exciting. Oh, look, we got a great special teams coordinator. I know. But if since it matters, since it's a part of the game, and this is one of the best people in the NFL at that, this is a huge hire no matter how you look at it, in my personal opinion. I don't feel like you can do much better than a Larry Izzo. Just a quick little background on Larry Izzo. In 2021, Izzo took over as Seattle special teams coordinator after spending 2018 through 2020 as an assistant. The Rice University alum spent 14 seasons as a linebacker and special teams ace, winning 3 Super Bowl championships with the New England Patriots in the 2000s. Now as Seattle special teams leader, used to be special teams leader, Izzo's unit earns a top 10 spot for the 4th consecutive season on Gozelin's list. He has 22 kicking game categories that help make up the criteria for Goslin's point system, from kickoff return yardage to blocked field goal attempts to punt yardage, all kinds of stuff. With 300 points, Seattle lands at 6th amongst their 31 league counterparts. So out of 32 teams in the NFL, Seattle Seahawks under Larry Izzo is ranked as the 6th best special teams unit in the NFL, and he deserves all of the credit for that. That guy has been developing players into elite special teams players left and right. And it's not even just like guys that they bring in, all you're only going to do is just special teams. That's it. They're bringing in talented guys that contribute to other sides of the ball, offense and defense, but he also still finds a way to motivate those guys and still go out there and be elite at special teams as well. Also, he was 6th on Goslin's list out of all NFL teams as far as special teams go, but Pro Football Focus graded him 3rd in the NFL this past season. Also, he's a Northern Virginia native, which is also pretty interesting. As a freshman and a sophomore, he went to Broad Run High School, but then his family relocated to Texas after that. But he's basically born and raised Virginia. It never hurts to bring another homer here, another guy that may potentially have grown up as a burgundy and gold fan, and this may be like his dream job, which also explains why he left the Seattle Seahawks to make a lateral move, which also brings my point that Dan Quinn is putting together such an elite staff because you have some guys making lateral moves from their old team to their new team just to be a part of something great. And then you also have a couple of guys that are willing to take demotions to say, hey man, I'll take a step back in power, title, money, all of that just to be a part of this staff. I'm telling y'all, we are building something great. This is something that everybody wants to be a part of if you see the vision. And I'm telling y'all, be optimistic now. But now going to Rick Gosselin's 2023 NFL special teams rankings. He has the Texans number 1, the Saints number 2, the Jets 3rd, the Raiders 4th, the Chargers 5th, and then the Seattle Seahawks 6th. And if you're wondering where the Commanders are, we are 3rd from the bottom, only above the Miami Dolphins and the LA Rams. So even though I felt like Nate Caxton was doing a pretty decent job, according to this metric system, apparently he was not doing a great job at all. And we're going from a coach that led us to having the 30th ranked special teams in the NFL to the 6th, according to this point system that Rick Gosselin put together. Again, it incorporates a lot of different metrics. Again, it's very detailed, man. He's not playing. There are 22 different categories and metrics that he comes up with for this point system. Just to remind you, very detailed stuff. And so when he says that Larry Izzo is 6th, I believe him. I mean, I'm not about to sit here and take hours out of my day. No, matter of fact, days out of my weeks out of my months to watch every NFL team special teams to actually rank myself who has the best special teams in the NFL. I'm just going to take his and Pro Football Focus's words for it because, again, he has us, Larry Izzo, at least 6th, and Pro Football Focus had him as 3rd, and now that's now our special teams coach right there. I'm super excited about that. And also, according to Goselin's ranking system and his point system and all of that, this is the 4th consecutive season that the Seahawks, led by Larry Izzo, has finished in the top 6. So ever since he got there, this special teams has been top 6 every year, according to that Gosselin ranking system. I'm super excited about that. And if you want to do an even deeper dive, if you don't like Gosselin's system, if you don't like Pro Football Focus, how about some advanced stats like DVOA? And when it comes to special teams DVOA ranking wise, in 2021 they were 5th, 2022 they were 4th, and 2023 they were 8th. I mean, you can't get much better than that, because not only is that greatness, but that's also consistency, which goes back to my point that this coaching staff also shows a lot of consistency, especially in like the Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. situation that we have going over there on the defensive side of the ball, because over the last 3 years, the Cowboys have led the NFL in takeaways over that 3-year span. That's not just a flash in the pan, like 1 year they led the NFL and that's it. They led the NFL 2 years in a row, and then they had a still really good year. I think they were like 12th or 14th this past season, but over the course of 3 years in totality, they led the NFL in takeaways, and it wasn't even close who's in second place. So this is a model of consistency. There's proven winning, there's proven productivity, there's proven coachability, development, and there's also a very high ceiling with a lot of these guys that we have on the staff, including a Larry Izzo, who, again, if he keeps up this type of work and he goes from the Seahawks, from making them a top 6 special teams unit in NFL to coming to the Commanders and taking us from 30th to 6th, people are definitely going to be looking at him for a head coaching job. I'm definitely scared of that. Definitely afraid of that situation. But also, Julian Love of the Seahawks had 13 special teams tackled this year on only 88 special team snaps all season. That's a tackle every 6.7 snaps, which is absolutely crazy. He played almost 200 snaps less than anyone else with 10 plus special teams tackles this year. That guy, Larry Izzo, had Julian Love out here balling, looking like one of the best special teams players in the entire NFL. And to add to that, safety Julian Love made the Pro Bowl for the first time in 2023 after recording a career high 4 interceptions along with 103 tackles and 10 passes defended. But the 5th-year Notre Dame alum also was a standout on special teams, tying for first place league-wide with 13 special teams tackles. So this is an elite player, a Pro Bowl safety on the defensive side of the ball, and Larry Izzo is still finding a way to motivate that guy to go out there and also be one of the best special teams players doing it. Because typically, and I wouldn't necessarily call it a stigma, but you know, when you're a great player on defense or offense, you're kind of like, why would I even bother putting my career at risk, my health at risk, contributing to special teams and making plays there? Like, that's not where the money is made. It's not like there's just this special teamer that's out here getting paid $20 million a year. I need to do my thing as a safety. And the fact that Larry Izzo is able to motivate a guy like Julian Love, a Pro Bowl safety, to not only go out there and just be great at special teams, and even just to go play special teams and contribute, but to also be elite at it and to be one of the best in the NFL. Again, I keep emphasizing the word motivation because special teams, being a special teams coach, is literally all about motivation. That's why a lot of teams covet them as potential head coaches, because if anybody can motivate a team, it's a special teams coordinator, because you're telling players to go out there and make less money but put their bodies at more risk than anywhere else on an NFL team. And to be able to convince these guys making millions of dollars to do that is incredible. And again, to Larry Izzo's credit, to get a Pro Bowl safety to do that is absolutely insane. That's very rare around the NFL. He may be the only Pro Bowler on the defensive or offensive side of the ball that was also that elite at special teams this past season. Maybe there's somebody I'm missing, but again, I can admit it. I'm not about to sit here and spend weeks and months watching special teams all around the NFL. I'm just going to take everybody's word for it, like Gosselin and Pro Football Focus, and just keep it pushing. I'm not going to lie. But it's not only that. Punter Michael Dixon ranked 5th league-wide in yards per punt at 50, a new career high in year 6. So he's getting the best years out of a punter. A fairly relatively young punter as well. And then kicker Jason Myers notched a new career high of field goals made, converting 35 of 42 attempts, 83.3% for 138 points. This guy is getting career best out of people on the special teams. And it's not even just special teams coverage like a Julian Love. It's not only just the punter, it's also the kicker. It's all three. He doesn't just specialize in one part of it. He specializes in developing every side of special teams. That's why his special teams units have been so elite since he's taken over as the special teams coach for the Seahawks, and I'm super excited about that. The fact that people are having career highs in special teams categories under this guy is very impressive. I don't know what he's telling them. I don't know what he's feeding them. I don't know what they're doing in practice with the kickers and punters, how he's improving their kicking ability, but whatever he's doing is working, and we should all be extremely excited about the fact that we have him on our side, man. Thank goodness, man. And shouts out to the fact that Dan Quinn again was able to steal a guy like this, because he's making a lateral move from the Seattle Seahawks to the Commanders. It's not like he's coming to the Commanders for a promotion. He's going to do the exact same thing. And you got to be have a certain type of mentality, which also makes me love this hire, because to make a lateral move like that and there's no motivation of, well, at least there's a promotion. At least there's a chance to become a head coach soon or something like that here. Like, there's no Larry Izzo comes here as a special teams coordinator and becomes the head coach within a year or two. There's none of that. And that takes takes a certain level of alpha mentality, which seems kind of opposite of what Ben Johnson had going on, because to basically go and be comfortable with being uncomfortable is huge, man. That's a certain type of mentality behind that, because he could have just stayed with the Seahawks. Same title, same exact responsibility, same amount of power, same exact job and everything, probably very similar pay and all of that. But he decided that instead of sticking with my team that I've worked so hard to build up rapport, to get these guys motivated, to get chemistry and all of this stuff, to just completely leave that behind and take on an entirely new project, and to not even have a promotion in near sight being held in front of you is like a motivation right there. That just shows the type of person that Larry Izzo is on top of all of that, man. I'm super excited about that. And again, I also want to credit Dan Quinn for being able to steal him from the Seahawks, man. Poor Mike McDonald. Mike McDonald's out here struggling out here, because he was already struggling to hire an offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator for forever. We hired ours way before they did. He was out here looking crazy. And I said this even before we ended up getting Dan Quinn as our head coach. Even when Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick, and Mike McDonald were all on the table, I did say, even though I did prefer those three guys at the time, I did say that between all of these top head coaching candidates, including those top three right there, when you throw Dan Quinn in there, Dan Quinn, you can argue, can put together the best staff in the NFL. And he's exceeded my expectations mightily. And at the same time, Mike McDonald, the fear that I had with either him, Ben Johnson, or Bobby Slowick becoming one of our head coaches was, what kind of staff can they put together? I mean, yeah, it's great to have the young, high-ceiling, bright, offensive or defensive minded head coach, the guy that's the up and comer, the riser, the prodigy, whatever. That's nice and all on one side, but on the other side, what connections do they have? Who can they call and be like, man, I need you to come over here and do this for us, be our offensive coordinator, be our defensive coordinator? What reputation do you have around the NFL? How many hands have you shaken? Dan Quinn has all of that in spades, and it's showing right now, because not to only to get an elite special teams coordinator and Larry Izzo just in general, but to steal him from Mike McDonald himself. And again, just to go back to it, that boy was struggling to find an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator. He just got his offensive coordinator today. He just got his defensive coordinator earlier today as well. We've had ours for a few days now. We've already hired our defensive passing game specialist and our offensive passing game specialist before the Seahawks even had their offensive coordinators or defensive coordinators yet. And then we go and steal their special teams coordinator from them, and now Mike McDonald has to find that as well. Dan Quinn is bullying these guys right now, especially Mike McDonald, man. Poor guy. He's struggling. He's having to just scrap together pieces, because for defensive coordinator, he ended up hiring Jayden, which is a pretty interesting hire. And then offensive coordinator, he got Bama recently just hired. I mean, he didn't even really get to do anything. He just came from Washington. Now he's over there at Alabama, where he was for like 2 seconds. Bama offensive coordinator and QB's coach Ryan Grubb from Washington/Alabama. Now he's working for the Seahawks. And it's really interesting too, because the Seahawks' new defensive coordinator under Mike McDonald had been with Dan Quinn on both the Falcons and the Cowboys, and it seemed like that would be a logical target for Quinn to bring over to Washington in whatever capacity. But he wasn't going to come here and be defensive coordinator, so he chose to stick with Mike McDonald as a defensive coordinator. I understand, take that promotion, take higher responsibility, rather than coming here to be just potentially like a linebackers or a DB's coach or something. Because we already, again, before Mike McDonald even has his defensive coordinator, we had head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and passing game specialists on both sides of the ball already. And so there was just nothing left for us to even potentially lure a guy like Jayden here. But man, Mike McDonald is struggling. But guess who's not? Dan Quinn. And on top of all of that, Tavita Pritchard has been announced that he will stay as the Commanders QB coach on Dan Quinn's staff. Pritchard was highly sought after and turned down other opportunities to stay in Washington. Do you hear this continued theme? People are doing whatever it takes to be a part of this staff, man. Tavita Pritchard could have easily have gone somewhere else and got a promotion or whatever, and he chose to stay here just to be a part of the staff, just to be a quarterback developer, just literally the QB's coach, and that's it. A lot of people are starting to look at him like the next Bobby Slowick type of guy, and so the fact that he stayed here just to be the QB's coach is very telling. Shouts out to John Kahn for pointing this out. More than a few teams had called about him. And when Pritchard joined the staff last year, when he just came to the Commanders as the QB's coach, the idea was for him to develop and eventually elevate within a year. Like, he's, again, a lot of people are looking at him as like the next Bobby Slowick type of guy. And so for him to just decide that, yeah, I'll just kick it with the Commanders one more year and just stay a QB's coach rather than going somewhere else to be like a passing game specialist, to add that to my resume so I can get closer to being an offensive coordinator. He just decided, man, what the Commanders are building right now, it looks special, and to be a part of that, I got to. Again, we have guys willing to take demotions. We have guys willing to turn down promotions. In Tavita Pritchard's case, we have a lot of guys making lateral moves like Jason Simmons, and who we just talked about in Larry Izzo's case as well. I'm telling y'all, there's a reason. There's a certain feeling around this organization right now. Adam Peters, Eugene Shin, Josh Harris leading the way. There's a certain feeling around this organization as to why everybody wants to be a part of it. I'm gonna go ahead and give y'all a fair warning now. The Commanders, we back, man. So honestly though, if I had to place a bet on it, if the Commanders offense explodes this season, who I would probably guess would be the first to be taken away by another team for a promotion, whether it be offensive coordinator, head coach, or whatever, is probably Tavita Pritchard. A lot of people are surprised that, again, that he was even willing to stay a QB's coach this season for us. Other teams were probably offering them at least some type of promotion. Again, passing game coordinator, maybe an offensive coordinator out there. The fact that he stayed with us and turned down all of those other opportunities is very telling. So now let's just do a complete review of what we have so far. Now we have head coach Dan Quinn, offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury, defensive coordinator Joe Witt Jr., special teams coordinator, who we just talked about earlier, Larry Izzo, QB's coach, who's just going to stay, Tavita Pritchard. Then we have defensive passing game coordinator Jason Simmons, and then Brian Johnson. People are saying that it's still technically to be determined, but it seems like he's passing game coordinator, but I've seen reported at the very least as a highly prominent offensive role. The only thing I can imagine it being is passing game coordinator, and again, I've seen it reported in different places that is what it will be, but I'm still seeing conflicting reports about maybe it's something else, and nobody wants to finalize what the exact title is. I hope we find out soon enough though. Shouts out to George Carmi for bringing this up too though. Seems like a pretty solid staff altogether. I like the diversity of experience, age, and exposure to various organizations. The Seahawks, Packers, Cowboys have had solid programs over the past few years. The only remaining question is synergy. Can Quinn unite the team? I'm optimistic. I agree wholeheartedly, 100%. Make sure y'all go follow George Carmi on Twitter, gcarmi21. Follow him on YouTube everywhere. Great follow there. I completely agree with that, man. I'm very excited about what we're building right now. A lot of people were worried about the fact that we hired our head coach last, but at the same time, Dan Quinn was able to not only pass Mike McDonald, but still a coach from his coaching staff and lap him, basically, in hiring his staff around the head coach. Even though Dan Quinn was the last head coach hired, he went ahead and zoomed right past Mike McDonald and probably some other coaching staffs out there that I just haven't taken a chance to see if they've hired passing game coordinators, QB coaches, and things like that. Even the Cowboys right now still trying to put together a complete coaching staff. They don't have anything besides defensive coordinator on the defensive side of the ball right now. So we'll see how that goes. We're even ahead of them on the defensive side of things as of right now. But then again, they probably, they have an idea of some guys that are still already there with the Cowboys that they may retain, or who knows, maybe they don't. But right now, Dan Quinn is killing it. That's all I know. So now, out of the positions that are still open as far as coaching staffs go, we still need wide receivers. We still need O-line, running back, D-line, edge rusher potentially if you want to bring in a guy specifically for that, linebacker, all of that type of stuff. We already have the DBs coach and things like that. I'm really excited though, man. I think O-line, like if we hit on that, that's like the last one that we like gotta hit on. I mean, of course we would love to hit on linebacker, we would love to hit on D-line, wide receiver, and all that type of stuff. That would be beautiful. And there was a report that Dan Quinn has something up his sleeve to bring in some more interesting hires. Now that was before we hired Larry Izzo, so maybe that was the one, but the way that they worded it, it sounded like he may not be done even after that. So watch out. Dan Quinn is putting together one of the more elite staffs of the NFL, one of the highest ceiling staffs at the very least. We got to see them go out there. They still haven't played one season yet together. And like my boy George Carmi brought up, it's up to Dan Quinn to unite everybody, because there's not a lot of chemistry here, but it's a lot of elite minds, and if he can bring them all together and get that synergy going, this can be elite. But either way, out of all of the position groups that I feel like that are remaining that we have to hit on at coach is offensive lines coach. We got, like, there's no way we don't hit on that. Yeah, it's nice to hit on all of these other ones, but O-line's coach is huge. Quarterback's coach is big time as well, and I'm very excited about who we have there. Tavita Pritchard, Brian Johnson, and Cliff Kingsbury all being proven the QB developers, college and NFL. But so now it just leaves the open question is the offensive line. Who are we going to bring in for that? And then defensive lines coach, you do have Ryan Kerrigan around if you want to look at him. But then you got my boy Serge the Shooter. Make sure you follow him on Twitter, because to me, he's the best Commanders photographer out here doing it. So you follow him just for that alone. But he also brought up a point on Twitter. He said a former Washington player, not Kerrigan though, may be in play for the D-line coaching position. Let's see how it plays out and if this source is correct. So now I'm interested. Now I'm intrigued. Who could we potentially be talking about? If it's not Ryan Kerrigan, who could it potentially be? I'm very excited who we could potentially bring in as a D-line coach. I mean, if we just want to bring in burgundy and gold legends that are great at what they do to continue to fill out this staff, I would be very excited about that, man. Bring one of them hogs back as an offensive lines coach, see how that goes. Bring back an elite Redskin defensive lineman from back in the day when we win the Super Bowls, let him coach. Hey man, I'll be willing to go for that experiment, I'm not gonna lie. But of course, priority is going to get a proven guy that's already coached for the NFL. If we can go get a proven tight ends coach, a proven offensive lines coach, all of that type of stuff, that's the priority. But hey man, if we bring back some legendary burgundy and gold players from the Super Bowl days and things like that, I would not be mad at it at all. For offensive lines coach, probably my favorite guy that's potentially available, but I highly doubt the Lions let him go, especially with Ben Johnson. He's already feeling petty towards us with how that whole situation went down, even though he started it. But I highly doubt he lets us get his offensive lines coach, but I felt like that would have been a great guy to be able to steal from the Lions if we could, but I doubt we can, because they'll just block it. If we're not bringing them in for a promotion, we're just going to make them do a lateral move from offensive lines coach for the Lions to offensive lines coach for the Commanders, then they'll just simply block that. I'm pretty sure Ben Johnson would. But, I mean, I would love that. That's an elite offensive lines coach right there. We haven't had a great offensive lines coach since Bill Callahan left to go to, I believe, the Browns. So please hit on that is my main point right there. And remember, the Cowboys, speaking of blocking, the Cowboys blocked us from getting Al Harris as our DBs coach. But now that they have hired a new defensive coordinator that may want his own DBs coach, he may want to bring in his own guy, even though that would be completely stupid and silly, because Al Harris is a genius when it comes to developing DBs, and players absolutely love him. But at the end of the day, Al Harris may end up being a free agent for us to just go ahead and hire ourselves. We don't have to even ask the Cowboys for permission, because technically he's fired, because maybe their new defensive coordinator wants to bring in a different DBs coach. I hope that's what happens. I'm hoping the Cowboys don't keep him. As soon as they think about firing him, Al Harris already knows who's waiting for him, who's waiting to bring him in. And if that happens, Dan Quinn, Joe Witt Jr., Jason Simmons, and Al Harris would arguably make the best defensive back development coaching group in the NFL. If Emmanuel Forbes, even without Al Harris, but if you add Al Harris to it, if Emmanuel Forbes can ball out under that coaching staff, under that development of an elite group of elite minds for the DB group, then nobody can. He can't ball out for anybody. If he can't go crazy under that group, he can't go crazy for anybody. Also, shouts out to Odyssey Sports for pointing this out. Dan Quinn told WrestleMania on the Team 980 that there are, quote, people that really, really want to be here, unquote. And this came out yesterday afternoon. So we'll see what's going on there, if there's even more potential hires on the way, even outside of Larry Izzo. Again, we still have some openings out there, like tight ends coach, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, all of that type of stuff, wide receivers. And we may bring in some high profile guys that, again, through the hires we've already made, we've seen guys willing to make lateral moves to come here. So that opens that possibility up. We've seen guys willing to not take a promotion that they could have easily have gotten to come here. And we've seen guys also take demotions to come here. So let's see what Dan Quinn has up his sleeve. I'm very excited. I'm very optimistic about him hiring a potential great coach for all of the positional coaches that we have left. And there's probably going to be a few that is like, who is that? But I'm just going to have faith that they hired the right guy, because so far they've been killing it. And I'm just going to assume that even if I don't know the guy just yet, and when I see the notification about who they hired as certain positional coaches, even if I don't know the guy, I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt that that guy is probably the next Bobby Slowick on the offensive side, or the next Mike McDonald on the defensive side, but he's just coming here to be a D-lines coach for now or something like that. Very optimistic about that, so I'm super excited. Make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content, man. I really appreciate y'all. Stay tuned. Every little thing that the Commanders have going on, I will keep you updated on all of it. And of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about all of this. Are you as high on Larry Izzo as I am? Again, I've acknowledged special teams coordinator isn't the most exciting hire that you could bring to a team, but if you have to go get one, you can't do much better than this guy. Let me know if you agree with that, disagree, whatever. Also about Tavita Pritchard staying as a QB's coach. Are you excited about that? Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Are you as optimistic about this coaching staff and the future of the Washington Commanders as I am? All of that. Stay tuned. I'm going to try to read and reply to as many comments as possible, but I've been super busy. I'm sorry. Catch y'all later. I'm out.